Imagine lying in bed, right?
Yeah.
You're in your brand new $500,000 suburban home.
Oh, yeah, just totally silent.
Exactly. The doors are locked. The security alarm is set. It feels, perfectly secure.
Right.
But, and this is the crazy part, right above your ceiling drywall, separated from you by literally just a few inches of wood and insulation, there is this sprawling, uncontrolled ecosystem just multiplying by the day.
It is a very comforting illusion, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, we build these beautiful homes, keep the wild out, but without realizing it, we are often just building like luxury climate-controlled caves for nature to conquer.
Yeah, we love to draw that hard, impenetrable line between our living rooms and the wild, but, and this is key, wildlife doesn't respect property lines, they only see resources.
And that tension is exactly what we are unpacking in this deep dive.
Mm.
Because if you look closely at one of the fastest growing areas in Northwest Terrace County, I'm talking about Cypress, Texas,
Yeah.
you notice this fascinating chaotic collision.
Oh, absolutely. Cypress is the perfect example.
Right. You have these massive, pristine, master plan neighborhoods springing up, but they're being built directly up against heavily wooded bottomlands and like vital creek corridors,
Right.
places like Cypress Creek and Little Cypress Creek.
Right. And those drainages, those are ancient, thriving habitats. When developers drop a subdivision just yards away from a creek corridor, you aren't just building homes next to nature, you're building homes directly inside of it.
Exactly. So our mission today is to uncover the surprising, relentless, and honestly sometimes deeply unsettling ways that nature pushes back against this suburban expansion.
It's a literal turf war.
It really is.
Eh.
And we're going to examine the highly systematic, almost military-level precision required to handle this human-wildlife collision safely. Because keeping the wild out of your walls, that is not a weekend DIY project, it's hardcore science.
Oh, definitely not a DIY thing.
Okay, let's unpack this. Before we get into the specific invaders, the bats, the raccoons, the snakes,
Yeah.
we need to understand the mindset required to actually win this clash.
Uh-huh.
So we're looking closely at one specific operation out there tackling this head-on, which is the Critter team.
Yes. And honestly, looking at their structure actually tells you everything you need to know about the severity of the problem.
Right.
So the Critter team was founded back in June 2015 by Mike Garrett, and he's a retired U.S. military veteran.
Which makes a lot of sense when you see how they operate.
Exactly. And since January 2016, Victoria Garrett has been the office manager. She's coordinating all the logistics, the inspections, scheduling all across Cypress and the broader Harris County area.
And what really stands out to me here is how intensely strict their operational model is.
Yeah.
Like they handle absolutely everything in-house.
0 subcontractors.
0. I mean, they are available 24/7 for emergencies, and they carry massive credentials. They're fully licensed. They have a Texas nuisance wildlife removal permit, full workers' comp, and get this, a $1 million per occurrence, $2 million aggregate general liability policy.
Which is huge. It's fascinating to look at the sheer scale of the paperwork and the liability coverage required to run an operation like this.
Yeah, it really puts it into perspective.
It does, because as a listener, that tells you right away that we aren't talking about, a guy chasing a raccoon off a porch with a pool net.
All right.
We're talking about high-stakes, hazardous structural interventions, and Mike Garrett's military background naturally translates into this, because in a military operation, you don't just neutralize a threat, you secure the perimeter.
Secure the perimeter. I like that.
That is exactly what they are doing with these homes. It's not just trapping a nuisance animal, it's about sealing every microscopic entry point, decontaminating the biological hazards left behind, and then they back that structural work with a written warranty.
I love that framing. It makes me think of suburban expansion as this massive game of musical chairs with natural habitats.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah. Like the developers bulldoze a field, the construction music stops, and the wildlife suddenly has to sit somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And because they've evolved over millions of years to survive, they don't just give up.
No, they adapt.
They adapt. They look at our fiberglass insulation and think, wow, premium nesting material. They look at our attics and see a predator-proof canopy. So let's start where these home invasions usually begin, right at the top. The high-altitude frontier.
The roof line, that is where the very first breaches occur, particularly with bats.
Ugh, bats.
I know. In Cypress, bat colonies are incredibly common, especially in those newer neighborhoods built right up against the creek corridors where the insect populations are super dense.
And the crazy thing is, They don't need an open window to get in. They are squeezing behind the fascia board, that decorative board that trims the brick siding.
Yep, or they get in through tiny gaps where the soffit meets the roofline.
And once a colony moves in, well, you're not talking about a couple of stray bats, right?
Yeah.
A single colony can number in the hundreds.
Hundreds, just packed into the darkest, tightest corners of your attic, which leads to a severe and often completely hidden crisis.
This is the part that freaked me out.
Yeah, so if an attic goes uninspected, bat guano, the droppings, accumulates rapidly. Sure, you might see some piling up on your driveway or stuck to your brick, but inside the enclosed attic, it is a massive biological hazard.
Because of the stores, right?
Exactly. Bat guano harbors histoplasma fungal spores, and as that guano dries out in the extreme Texas heat, those spores become this fine, invisible dust.
And the mechanism here is what's truly terrifying. When those spores become airborne, your home's HVAC system, which, by the way, often runs right through the attic in Texas, can actually suck that contaminated air in and circulate it directly into your living room.
Your kitchen, your bedroom, everywhere.
Yeah. You get urine staining literally bleeding through the ceiling drywall and this heavy toxic ammonia odor.
Not to mention the direct physical risks. The CDC explicitly identifies rabies as a fatal viral disease commonly transmitted by bat bites and scratches.
Oh, man.
You do not want a panicked, disoriented bat finding its way down your chimney or squeezing through a recessed light fixture into your house. This requires absolute professional precision.
Right.
Mike Garrett actually holds an NWCOA bat standard certification. He has personally completed between 60 to 80 complex bat exclusion projects, and his company handles 30 to 40 bat jobs every single year across the region.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, and I have to push back here. Or at least ask the question, every homeowner is probably screaming at their dashboard right now.
Go for it.
Why can't I just grab a ladder, wait until dusk when the bats fly out to hunt for mosquitoes, and then just blast the hole with a can of expanding foam?
I mean, it is the most logical assumption in the world, right? But doing that is a recipe for an absolute catastrophe.
Wait, really? Why?
First off, bats do not all leave at the exact same time. But more importantly, during certain times of the year, there are flightless young, they're called pups, left behind in the roost. If you just block the hole, you are trapping dozens of animals inside the structure.
Oh, man. They would just panic.
Exactly. They panic, they try to find an alternate way out, and often that alternate route leads straight down into your living space.
That is nightmare fuel.
And the ones that don't make it out, they die inside your wall voids. The resulting odor, the flies, the maggots, the sanitation crisis, it will render your home unlivable.
Wow.
That's why professional legal exclusion uses specialized one-way devices. These are essentially smooth tubes or netting systems placed over the entry points.
Okay, so they can get out but not back in.
Exactly. They slide out safely to feed, but the mechanics of the device make it physically impossible for them to grip and re-enter. Only after multiple days, when the entire colony is definitively confirmed gone, do they remove the devices and permanently seal the gaps.
So it really requires a deep understanding of their biology, not just a caulking gun.
100%.
And bats aren't the only ones exploiting the high ground. Birds are a massive issue in Cypress. European starlings, house sparrows, pigeons. I mean, they're nesting in commercial signage along US 290 and FM 1960, sure. But on residential homes, they're flying straight into dryer vents.
Bathroom exhaust vents, open soffits, you name it.
Right. And the issue with those builder-grade vents isn't just that they're cheap. It's the mechanism of how they fail.
Right, because the flimsy plastic flaps on a standard builder vent will literally warp in the extreme Texas heat.
Just melt right open.
Exactly. Once that plastic curls, it leaves a permanent half-inch gap. And to a bird, that gap looks exactly like the entrance to a preheated, predator-proof cavern.
Which creates immediate hazards. A bird nest is essentially tightly packed kindling. When they stuff that into a dryer vent, they completely block the exhaust airflow.
It's so dangerous.
It really is. You are trapping intense heat and lint, creating a severe immediate fire risk. Plus, bird waste is highly acidic. It literally corrodes metal building materials over time. But dealing with birds is uniquely complicated because of the law, right?
Yes. This is a critical legal hurdle that most homeowners are completely unaware of.
Yeah, I had no idea about this.
The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service strictly enforces the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. It is a federal law protecting most native bird species. It makes it strictly illegal to disturb an active nest, remove eggs, or harm protected birds without highly specific federal authorization.
So you could literally have a massive fire hazard sitting inside your dryer vent, but because there are eggs in it, it is federally protected. That is wild.
It is a massive liability. That's why Cypress Wildlife Control for Birds requires species identification before you even touch a ladder. The Critter team utilizes bird barrier certified installations.
Okay, what does that mean?
We are talking about specialized, legal, and permanent exclusion things like architectural spiking, heavy-duty netting, and specialized metal vent covers that won't warp in the sun. Then, once legally cleared, they do the comprehensive nest removal, the waste sanitation, and they clear that vent line to restore your home's airflow.
Okay, so we've established the front lines, we've secured the perimeter against the flyers.
Yeah.
But, gravity always wins. All that vulnerability at the roofline eventually gives way to larger invaders.
The heavy hitters.
Yeah. If the roofline is compromised, the attic itself becomes the primary battleground for what I like to call the demolition crew. We're talking raccoons, squirrels, and roof rats. These animals do not just quietly move in, they actively, aggressively destroy the structural integrity of your house.
Raccoons are undoubtedly one of the most destructive attic intruders in Cyprus.
Oh, I believe it.
Those same beautiful creek corridors and neighborhood retention lakes that make the master-planned communities look so appealing. They give raccoons a reliable year-round water source and literally provide an overgrown highway straight to residential roofs.
And raccoons are incredibly strong. Like in late winter, a pregnant female raccoon looking for a safe den site won't just look for a hole. She will make one.
Oh, she'll tear the house apart.
Literally. She will grab a ridge vent and tear the metal open with her hands, or push straight through a weakened, water-damaged wooden soffit. You'll wake up and see muddy footprints all over your gutters, or find chihuahua-sized droppings sitting right on your roof shingles.
It's alarming.
And once they get inside, they use your attic like a playground. They tear open your expensive ductwork just to enjoy the air conditioning. And their sheer weight compresses the blown-in insulation, completely ruining your home's energy efficiency.
But the biological risk is what truly elevates a raccoon infestation to an emergency. The CDC identifies raccoon feces as carrying Balis ascaris roundworm eggs.
Okay, explain how that works, because attics in Texas get up to, 130, 140 degrees in the summer. How does anything survive that?
That is exactly what makes Balis ascaris so dangerous. These microscopic roundworm eggs have an incredibly resilient, thick outer shell. They can survive extreme heat, freezing cold, and dry environments for years. Years. If a homeowner goes up there with a broom and a shop vac and disturbs that dried feces without a respirator, they are inhaling viable parasites.
That makes my skin crawl.
It requires highly specialized attic decontamination. Furthermore, removing the raccoons themselves requires a delicate touch. If a female has a litter of pups hidden deep in a wall drop, you can't just set a trap and leave.
Right, because then the babies starve.
Exactly. So the Critter team uses humane, daily monitored live traps. They take specific care to handle nursing females so that mothers and their young are safely kept together and removed as a unit.
That's really good to hear. But then you have the squirrels. Now, Cyprus has a really interesting mix of architecture. You have older, established neighborhoods along Hofmeister and Telge roads with massive, mature trees whose branches literally overhang the roofs.
Direct bridges to the attic.
Exactly. But even the brand-new master-planned homes are completely vulnerable because they often rely on those builder-grade soffit connections we talked about.
And a squirrel's primary biological drive is what causes the destruction here. A squirrel's front teeth never stop growing.
Really? Never?
Never. To keep them filed down, they're biologically compelled to chew constantly. That is the core of the issue. When a squirrel gets into an attic, it doesn't just nest. It gnaws on the wooden joists, it shreds the insulation to build its nests, and most terrifyingly, it chews directly through the rubber casing of your electrical wiring.
Which is a huge deal. The Kansas State University Extension has actually thoroughly documented this. The amount of unexplained residential house fires that are ultimately traced back to exposed, chewed wires from squirrels occupying attics is just staggering.
It's terrifying.
You'll hear this frantic scratching and running sound right at daybreak, and you'll find these little oblong pellets scattered along their travel paths.
Which brings up a very common homeowner mistake.
Oh, I read an analogy in our notes about this that made me laugh out loud.
The handyman one.
Yes. So a homeowner hears a squirrel, finds the chewed hole on the outside of the house, and calls a regular neighborhood handyman to just nail a piece of wood over it. Calling a regular handyman to patch a squirrel hole is essentially like locking an enraged vandal inside an art museum.
That is the perfect way to visualize it. If you seal the entry hole without first trapping and removing the animal, that squirrel will just relentlessly chew its way back out.
Or worse.
Right, or worse, it will panic and chew its way completely through your ceiling drywall into your bedroom, causing infinitely more damage. Yeah. Proper permanent proofing requires a specific sequence. You trap them first. Then you install custom fabricated 23-gauge aluminum painted to seamlessly match the home's exterior, by the way, at every single compromised soffit connection. It requires materials that teeth simply cannot penetrate.
Okay, so raccoons are the heavy demolition. Squirrels are the vandals. That leaves the roof rats, which are the ultimate stealth infiltrators.
The worst.
The dense landscaping, the mulch beds, the retention ponds, Cypress gives them an absolute paradise. And here is the terrifying mechanic of a roof rat. Their skeletal structure is incredibly collapsible. They can squeeze their entire body through any gap larger than a dime.
A dime. I want everyone listening to think about the exterior of their home right now. Think about how many dime-sized gaps exist along your roof line, or where the brick meets the siding, or where your exterior AC lines penetrate the wall.
It's unsettling. Listener, if you are storing a bag of dog food in your garage and you move it and notice what looks like large, dark coffee grounds scattered along the baseboards, you don't just have a wandering pest. You have an established colony.
Yep. You're infested.
And unlike bats, which designate a single spot for their waste, rats urinate and drop waste continuously wherever they travel. They will chew through your PVC plumbing pipes for water. They will contaminate your pantry.
It's a biohazard.
The EPA clearly outlines the property damage and the severe health risks of airborne pathogens from rodent urine and droppings accumulating in enclosed spaces.
And this is where we have to highlight a core operational rule of the critter team. When dealing with rats, they have an absolute strict rule: zero poison.
Zero poison at all.
None. They exclusively use specialized snap traps placed strategically along confirmed travel paths, combined with heavy exclusion work like installing stainless steel mesh inside weep holes and clear sealant at structural penetrations.
I have to stop you there, and I will admit my own flaw here. I'm absolutely guilty of this. The second I see a rat in the garage, my immediate instinct is to run to the hardware store, buy the strongest green blocks of poison they sell, and throw them in the corners.
Everyone does it.
It just seems like the cheapest, fastest, most lethal fix. Why is this professional company so aggressively against doing exactly what 90% of homeowners instinctively do?
Well, what's fascinating here is it is the most common instinct, sure, but biologically and structurally, it is an absolute disaster.
Okay, how so?
Let's look at the mechanism of what happens when a rat consumes that hardware store poison. The poison does not kill them instantly. It works by causing severe internal bleeding and dehydration.
Ah, I see.
So as the rat begins to feel sick and desperately thirsty, its instinct is to retreat to the deepest, darkest, most inaccessible part of its territory to hide and die.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Which is usually deep inside the wall voids of the house.
Precisely. You end up with a decomposing animal entirely sealed inside your drywall. The cascading nightmare of that is horrific. The odor permeates the drywall itself, making that room completely uninhabitable for weeks.
I can't even imagine the smell.
It's awful. And the decomposing body attracts blowflies, maggots, and other scavengers into the structure. It transforms a pest problem into a massive, highly expensive sanitation and demolition crisis, because you often have to literally cut open the walls to find the carcass.
That makes total sense.
That is exactly why the critter team's poison-free snap trap method is fundamentally superior. It guarantees that you actually retrieve the animal every single time.
It solves the problem without creating a worse one. And, this entire ecosystem is connected. What happens up top in the attic directly dictates what happens down below.
Exactly.
The ecosystem above literally feeds the ecosystem below, which brings us to the ground floor. Snakes, armadillos, and severe odors.
Cypress sits right in the middle of prime snake habitat. Texas Parks and Wildlife notes that venomous copperheads and western cottonmouths are common in northwest Harris County, right alongside non-venomous rat snakes and coachwhips.
Right.
The beautifully preserved green belts in these new communities support incredibly healthy snake populations.
And the biological rule of thumb here is chilling. If you find a snake inside your house or your garage, it usually means you have a rodent problem.
Almost always.
Snakes access homes through weakened ground-level vents, gaps under garage doors, and those AC line penetrations we mentioned. A snake only cares about three things: Hibernating, mating, and eating.
That's it.
If it's the middle of the summer, they aren't hibernating. If they aren't mating, they're following a scent trail. They are following the rats into your walls.
Which is terrifying for a homeowner.
But wait, if a snake is just following the food, isn't the snake technically acting as free, albeit terrifying pest control?
Well, this raises an important question about how we view ecosystems and problem solving. Yes, the snake is hunting the rodents, but addressing the symptom like the venomous snake on your patio without addressing the root cause, the rodents breeding in your walls and the structural gaps allowing them in, is a losing battle.
Ah, I see.
If you hire someone to just remove the copperhead, but you leave the dime-sized gaps in the rat population intact, another snake is going to follow that exact same scent trail next week. Solving the snake problem requires solving the wildlife issue that attracted it. It requires ground-level sealing combined with total rodent exclusion.
The ecosystem is totally linked. And speaking of the ground level, armadillos are quietly causing thousands of dollars in damage.
Oh, they tear yards up.
They really do. The clay soils and perfectly irrigated lawns in Cypress are an armadillo's absolute dream. Texas A&M AgriLife Extension details how they violently dig for grubs and earthworms at night. A single armadillo can completely destroy a manicured yard in one evening.
But the damage is far more than cosmetic. As they burrow, they undermine the structural integrity of foundations, sidewalks, driveways, and those heavy AC pads.
Yeah, that's not cheap to fix.
Not at all. In the expansive clay soils of Harris County, foundation movement is already a massive, expensive concern for homeowners. A deep burrow right next to a foundation footer can lead to severe settling, cracking, and water pooling.
And you can't just catch them easily. Store-bought traps rarely work because armadillos have terrible eyesight. They navigate primarily by smell and by following structural edges like fences and foundation lines.
Right.
Catching them requires a technician who could read those subtle travel routes and precisely angle a humane live trap to intercept them.
Which is the recurring theme here. Whether it is the exact angle of an armadillo trap, the precise mechanics of a one-way door for a bat exclusion, or the specific gauge of aluminum required to stop a squirrel's teeth precision matters.
And wrapping up the ground level, we have to talk about pure sanitation. Skunks denning under raised decks, sheds, or pier and beam foundations. The smell alone can make a property totally unusable.
It is bearable.
Opossums, while they are less destructive chewers than raccoons, cause massive odor issues because they generate rapid dropping accumulations in tight crawl spaces. And of course, dead animal removal.
Always a fun one.
When a critter naturally dies inside a chimney or a wall void, the extraction, the odor treatment, and the sanitization have to be incredibly fast. The critter team handles all of it: trapping, den exclusion, and full decontamination.
It all comes back to the necessity of that comprehensive in-house approach. Every single one of these scenarios, from a federally protected migratory bird nesting in a vent, to a highly destructive raccoon in the attic, to a venomous copperhead cornered in a garage, requires a completely different biological understanding and a specialized set of tools.
Totally.
Having a single highly trained team capable of safely handling the entire spectrum of these conflicts without outsourcing any of the liability to subcontractors is the only way to ensure that the perimeter is truly permanently secured.
And for anyone in the area dealing with this wild collision of nature and neighborhood, exactly who to call is very clear. The Critter team handles all of these specialized services across Cypress and the entirety of Harris County.
Highly recommend them.
Their contact information is explicitly detailed for anyone who needs it. Their physical address is 17627 Shadow Valley Drive, Spring, Texas, 77379. And you can reach them by phone at 281-800-4992. Remember, they are on call 24/7 for these exact types of structural and biological emergencies.
That 24/7 availability is a lifesaver.
So what does this all mean? We started by talking about that pristine suburban house, the illusion of a perfect, impenetrable fortress keeping the wild at bay.
Right, that comforting but false hard line between the living room and the ecosystem.
But after exploring all of this, understanding the physics of warping plastic vents, the sheer chewing power of a squirrel, the collapsible skeleton of a roof rat, it completely changes how you view a house. Our homes are not fortresses. They're porous, breathing structures, sitting squarely inside a broader, incredibly adaptive ecosystem.
And nature is endlessly patient. It is always probing the perimeter for a weakness.
Which leaves you with a lingering, provocative question to think about. As our suburban sprawl continues to accelerate and these natural habitats shrink even further, is modern architecture eventually going to be forced to evolve?
That's a fascinating thought.
Will the neighborhoods of the next few decades be built not with the impossible goal of keeping nature completely out, but rather specifically designed with integrated bypasses and materials meant to safely coexist with these animals?
I wouldn't be surprised.
Until that day comes, I want you to step outside tonight and just look up at your roofline. Look at your vents, your gutters, your brick trim. Don't just see architecture. You are looking at the active frontier line of the wild world outside.
Keep your perimeter secure.